Why are Liverpool losing games? Because after spending over £400 million on shiny new players, you'd think they'd be unstoppable. But actually, they're quite stoppable, and in fact, quite vulnerable. But why is that? Why are Liverpool losing so many games? Well, Arne Slot says it's because teams have definitely found a playing style against us. We haven't found the answer. And that playing style, as you may have realised by now, is that teams are going long against them. You can see here lots of long balls against them. Blue is open play, white is from the opposition goalkeeper. But it's not just that teams are going long against Liverpool, it's that they're going direct. And that's a direct consequence of how Arne Slot wants his team to play. He wants controlled possession, to create things in open play by pushing players forward. But by adding more attacking components to it, he's tipped the balance slightly. And so what's happening is Liverpool are pushing forward, they're not really set up to deal with counterattacks, and teams are finding ways to counterattack them. This is the first game of the season against Bournemouth, lots of Liverpool players forward. Bournemouth can counterattack, and they have 2 centre-backs left on their own against a marauding counterattack. And this is from the last game they played before we recorded this. This is against Brentford. Liverpool essentially in 2 banks of 4. So that means there are 2 centre-backs very much exposed on their own if anything goes wrong, but that should be fine. They've got great attacking players. So we have here's a pass into Wirtz. Wirtz plays a little short pass back to Ekitike. He wants to play a little 1-2, but the ball is slightly misplaced, and that tiny error means that when the ball is turned over, Kevin Shada can just run in behind, and Damsgaard can then play it in behind the exposed 2 centre-backs. But it's not just counter-attacks, it's also that teams are finding ways to manipulate Liverpool to find ways to win the ball off of them. Man United, for example, what they did was they would pass backwards to try and draw the press out. They know how Liverpool were pressed in this kind of shape here, and as they pushed up, they put lots of players close together in the middle, the goalkeeper would go long, and then when someone would win the header, either Kanate or Van Dijk, there'd be players all around to win the second ball, and then of course you can just immediately counter against them. But it's not just United or counterattacks or long balls. Chelsea found ways to manipulate Liverpool and the way that they pressed to play through them. And what they did was they put their 2 centre-backs wide and build up, so Liverpool pressed in like this 4-2-4 shape. So Chelsea made their players nice and wide. You make the build-up shape really nice and wide here. And they put the number 6 in this shape here. And what Chelsea would normally do is play with a 2-3 or a 3-2 shape, so they've got the angles, but not now. What they do is they have this player here, and then they would put wingers high and wide to pin back these fullbacks. So this is really important. Wingers come on, pin back the fullbacks. Because they know that Liverpool are going to play with a +1 system at the back, which means if you have 1 striker, they'll have 1 player at the spare at the back for a bit of safety. So let's say he's next to Van Dijk, because Kanate's free. Then of course Chelsea have 2 more players you put on your midfielders who'll go next to these, because Liverpool are going to defend against them man-to-man. But by playing +1 man-to-man, that of course means you've got a free player. But there's more, because Chelsea knew that Salah doesn't really do an awful lot of tracking back. He's in position to counterattack. And so if Marc Cucurella, for example, were to wander past him, there's a good chance he would also be free. So if this is what the case is, then what you need is Gravenberch might need to jump up here, which leaves him spare, which means Kanate jumps up here, which means he's spare, which means Cucurella is in behind. So they always have an advantage, and you can see it actually play out on the pitch. Chelsea on the ball, everyone's got a job to do out of possession. This is what they should be doing. So Szoboszlai's got to step forward, obviously, onto the player with the ball. You've got players making sure that everyone is looked after. Salah and Cucurella here is the important bit. All of this means there is a spare man because of the +1 system at the back. So if you can get the ball through to Moises Caicedo and he can just run to the middle of the midfield and then score a rocket shot, it's kind of hard to predict this is going to happen. But that's the consequence of having that +1 thing and the way Chelsea manipulating it. They are able to play through, get into them to score. And later on in the same game, the same problems. Here's Cucurella, he's totally unmarked, he's into the box, in behind, plays the ball across the goal, and Estevao can't miss, and he doesn't. It's then a Chelsea win. And the thing is, Chelsea planned all this. Marc Cucurella told us. He said, we try to attack that area always because we know Salah is always ready to counterattack. So this isn't build-up. They know that Salah is going to be waiting higher up the pitch. He's not going to drop back in because they want to play him, they want to find him on the counterattack. There'd be more attacking that way. And so we practice, and the manager always tells us the space is maybe there, as in behind Salah. I think they play one style of game where Salah is always ready to attack, so we prepare for that. And that's exactly what they did. But it's not just press manipulation or long balls or directed counterattacks, any of that. Liverpool aren't defending amazingly 1v1 as well, or individual battles that they're losing. And so what you have here is Liverpool are not doing very well at defending set pieces. And of course, everyone else in the Premier League has gone massive and gone really big for this, but Liverpool haven't. And this is what we're starting to see. So against Brentford, Arne Slot said they deliberately practiced defending against throw-ins to make sure they could deal with what they'd expect from Brentford. But inside 5 minutes, the ball is hurled long from the sidelines, Ekitike is beaten in the air, everyone else is beaten in the air, Kerkez is not strong enough here, the ball is in the back of the net. Exactly what they planned to stop is what's happened. Now, some of those problems are players losing individual battles. As we said, playing against massive lads, sometimes it can be difficult. But you can't ignore that some of the structures and the positions that Slot has his players in are putting his players in positions they don't want to be. And the question is that by tinkering to try and make them really in control and attacking, has Arne Slot changed too much too soon? Because everything changed in the summer. It's not just the players that came in. The really important one is that Alexander-Arnold went out. And I have this graphic from Mark our stats on X, so thanks for sharing this with us. But what we have here, last season you have Robertson and Trent in the 91st percentile of progression, ball progression from the back. So the way to progress in the ball is mostly from these. You have 3 defenders actually who are in the upper percentiles of ball progression from the back. And really important how you play out. This season, they don't have that. Bradley and Kirk is nowhere near it. And it's affected everything in the team, how they play out, so how teams can approach against them out of possession. Now, Slot did, of course, try to address this in the summer by bringing in Jeremy Frimpong. And the way he progresses play is by carrying it. You don't really want to try and dribble past players in your own half. He's more of a winger also, not as physical as anyone else at right back as well. But what you get is a player who's essentially a winger. That's what you get from Frimpong. Hasn't played an awful lot. Connor Bradley, I really like as a fullback, but he lacks the X factor, as almost everyone does, of Alexander-Arnold. The difference in progression from passes is enormous. And what Alexander-Arnold gives you is what few players in the world can give you. He's essentially a unicorn player. It's just one of a kind. And Liverpool have kind of been built around him for the last few seasons, so it's no wonder it's difficult to replace him. But you see in certain situations, this is an example from last season against Newcastle. So what you have is Alexander-Arnold on the right-hand side. You see they've got this kind of safety net of 3. Alexander-Arnold passes it wide to Salah. In the middle, you've got something not dissimilar now to what Slot's doing. You've got the left backs pushed right up. You've got central forward here. You've got 2 midfielders pushed up and the left winger is inside. So lots of players over here. But the point is, Salah's here, Alexander-Arnold is here. Salah tries to take on the fullback, doesn't fancy it, pushes it back to Alexander-Arnold, and he can now ping a ball to the other side of the pitch instantly. That opens up the pitch, because then the defence has to come across, which creates gaps, it creates a bit of unrest. Liverpool can then work the space, try and create something that way. But now they don't have that, which is not really their fault. And so what Slot tried to do was bring in a player like Florian Wirtz. Now, this makes sense on paper, because as we know, Liverpool want to push forward. You see those 2 banks of 4. They want to be trying to push the opposition back. So if you have a player against a low block, Wirtz is the perfect player to try and break those defences open. But things keep not working, and he's getting into positions he doesn't want to be in. So for example, rather than having Alexander-Arnold trying to progress the play from the situation here, Konate passes it into Wirtz, who drops deep. He receives the ball against Crystal Palace, turns, and then tries to punch the ball through. Now this is great. This is great progression, pushes it through. This is kind of what you want to see. And Liverpool, I don't think they make use of this situation, but this is what Wirtz can do when he drops in. But you want him in the final third. But instead, what he keeps doing is being really deep. Same game with Crystal Palace. He's dropping into the right back slot, carrying the ball forward, a bit of miscommunication between him and Bradley, tries to slip him in, the ball goes loose. But again, as we keep seeing with Liverpool, when the ball turns over, there are too many players behind the ball and no one's really in position to deal with the counter-attack. This is what keeps happening. And because there's no Alexander-Arnold, Florian Wirtz is trying to do a lot of the progression. That's what he's doing, but he's doing it in deep positions. You see, this is what he's meant to do. In the final third, you want all those touches in the final third, but for Liverpool this season, he's getting them all really deep. That's not where you want the player like this to be. And so what you have instead is Florian Wirtz trying to make things happen in the final third, Liverpool pushing players forward to try and squeeze teams in, but it's not quite working. It might be a bit connection. So here's an example. This is Wirtz receiving the ball, Liverpool are trying to play through, he is able to find space, turns, players are going to close him down straight away, he tries to go past them, he ends up losing the ball, and again we see that the problem Liverpool have is they're not really in position to deal with the counter-attack. 2 centre-backs exposed, McAllister's not got the physicality really to run back and help out with this. But the point I'm trying to make overall, the progression has changed, and the main creator and progressor of play has moved from this position to somewhere up here. So they've changed that completely. It's not just the creation and the progression, it's also the goal scoring. So it's moved from being Salah, who's a player who moves inside, to being a central striker. And by focusing around the central striker with someone helping out and dovetailing around him, Slot has kind of changed his shape. And this is what I mean, but has he changed too much too soon? Because he's pushing players like Gakpo and Salah into wide areas. That's kind of why I divided the pitch like this. So this is what it looks like. You have players in the wide areas, but you also have lots of players in the central areas. But by having 2 players here, if you have player here, Salah now has less space to run into. And I think that adjustment to Salah's positioning and his role are why he's not quite as effective this year. So he's making far fewer dribbles. He's just not doing as much in front of goal. But it could be that there are players in his way that aren't allowing him to do the things he wants to do. Because in the past, obviously Salah would have Alexander-Arnold being able to play him in behind. So that's one thing he's missing. But he'd also have Szoboszlai who'd be on the pitch somewhere. There he is. You put him in here. So take Wirtz out. Szoboszlai would be playing in midfield because the shape would be more like this. You'd have one player here looking after the defenders so they can be a bit more split, which covers more ground. And you have Szoboszlai here. And that means that when Salah goes inside, Szoboszlai can go out wide and you get those wide triangles. The fullback can push up to support and they can all rotate and they're still looking after more of the pitch. So rather than having them into these 4 set lanes, you have players covering different parts of the pitch. The rest defence is safer when you have Salah playing inside more like this with a midfielder looking after them. But now it's a midfield too. So now you're playing kind of like this. So you're kicking Szoboszlai off, you've got Wirtz in floating around, and you've got the fullback having to look after this area here because Salah's less likely to get in the counter-attack. But because they're trying to play through the middle and use the central striker with someone dovetailing around him and Gakpo's coming inside, there's just less space and less opportunity for Salah to do anything fun that he likes to do. Now, some of this will be tactical in the things that Slot's doing, but Salah has also talked about how it might be to do with connections, because he's missing a lot of players he used to have solid connections with, especially Trent Alexander-Arnold. But he said recently, "So far, I didn't figure the connections out yet, like with Darwin Núñez or Lucho Diaz, or the guys they used to play in front of, or Diogo. I knew where to start with Diogo or Darwin, I knew where to find them, I knew their game very well, but with Hugo Ekitike, he's still new." This was at the start of the season. And I see examples on the pitch for Liverpool where you see those connections maybe lacking. I see it with Salah an awful lot at the moment. I see it with Florian Wirtz quite a lot. Players just not quite on the same wavelength, but also there's loads of other stuff going on. But specifically to Salah and this new change where he kind of needs to be holding the width to support players through the middle. It's interesting that it's not a connection thing, but more that when you play Frimpong instead of him against Man United in the final few minutes, Frimpong makes far more of a threat by like taking on players on the outside and almost setting up a goal that would have had Gakpo levelling the scores. Then we were talking about all these losses in a row. And you see the same with Chiesa when he came on against Eintracht Frankfurt. As soon as he comes on, Liverpool look more balanced. There's more balance there. They have a bit more of attacking threat, but also a bit more defensive safety. It's not that Salah is a bad player, he's amazing. But there's certain things within the structure that Slot's putting in, which is not getting the most out of him, but it's also making them weaker in defence. But the final problem I think Liverpool may have is what they have on their left side. So, Cody Gakpo, lovely player, but he profiles very differently to Luis Diaz, who was able to take players on and make things out of nothing. Gakpo is more of a central forward who can play wide, he likes to come inside and shoot, that's what he does an awful lot. Luis Diaz could do it all, he can create things out of nothing really. And so that change is different. But of course the other big change is that Andy Robertson isn't playing so much and Milos Kerkez has come in. Now he's struggled at times a bit, I think, especially with the physicality of certain teams, like Brentford we saw it. But what he also hasn't been able to do is get the ball in positions that he wants. He is making attacking runs forward, he is making the runs overlapping and underlapping, but often isn't getting the ball. And here's an example against Man United. Here's Gravenberch on the ball, and you see Kerkez is about to make the run down here. But the important thing is you've got Gakpo and Salah in these wide areas. So you can see lots of players in the central areas. It's not one of them is Salah. They're all the wide forwards are meant to be wide as wingers in a situation to stretch the pitch. You've also got Conor Bradley looking after this little area of the pitch because we know that Salah is probably unlikely to try and track back, so he's looking after that bit there. But he'll push forward soon to join in the two rows of four and they can be caught on the counter. But what you have is Milos Kerkez making the run underneath. He's making an underlapping run, and if Gravenberch plays his ball in, he's going to be in behind and with a chance at goal. But he doesn't make that pass. So then Gravenberch resets, looks up, Salah makes the run, doesn't get the pass. That ball would put him straight in. And there are loads of examples throughout the season where Salah's making the run but not getting the ball. And there's loads of examples where Kerkez is making the run, not getting the ball. Now, if you had a player like Trent Alexander-Arnold, for example, in that position, he probably would have the pass. And Dominic Szoboszlai played in that holding role and made some of the passes as well. But you can't take Gravenberch out. The team you want in here, but you want to have more progression from deeper areas. But what they're getting is Florian Wirtz dropping in to help with that, which means he's not in the last line, which means that other players push forward, which means that you're then just creating a vacuum of players, which means that teams are able to counterattack against them. So everything that they're doing is causing themselves problems. And so that's why I think Liverpool are losing games. Teams are going long against them, we know that. Teams are counterattacking against them because they've got the structural positions to be able to do it. Liverpool aren't looking good in rest defence. And there's players that aren't winning their individual battles. And then there are players being moved in positions where they probably shouldn't be. You're not getting the most out of Salah, you're not getting the most out of Wirtz. Nothing's quite clicking just yet. But I wouldn't say it's a crisis. What I would say is that teams have found a way to play against Liverpool, many ways against Liverpool, but Liverpool, as Slot has said, haven't found the answer.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Amy Lawrence and James Horncastle. With the latest transfer news and insights on every Premier League story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football, and you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.